recording, Jesse, if you want to start.
Started.
All right. Very good then. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We are here for what we hope is our final meeting of the Body Worn Camera Ad Hoc. I'm Brenda Harbin Forte, Commissioner Harbin Forte, chairing this ad hoc committee. The other member of the ad hoc is Commissioner Jesse Shea, who's present, and Commissioner and Vice Chair Marsha Peterson, who's present. We have on the phone on the Zoom Chief Reginald Lyles, Officer Cervantes from OPD, Lieutenant Turner from OPD, Jody Geddes from RJOY, and we have Frida Caro from from CPRA, and we have Deputy Director Keona Settle from the Oakland Police Department as well. So we are here to go through the latest draft of the Body Worn Camera policy. And I'm going to ask Officer Cervantes to go ahead and start sharing her screen, and we will walk through the final edits to the policy. And I'm going to welcome all of you, and just want to thank you at the outset for all the hard work that everybody's put on this policy to date. Okay, Officer Cervantes, you can go ahead.
All righty. So before everyone can see the screen, is that
Yeah, you can make it larger, that would be great. Is there a way to
Absolutely.
enlarge it?
Are you guys able to see that a little bit better or no?
Yes, that's fine. That's good. And why don't we take it from the top and just start with the first, from the first paragraph on. Okay. And for any of you who have edits, and Vice Chair Peterson, Officer Cervantes did get your proposed edits from Lieutenant Turner, but I'm not, but they have not been incorporated yet. And you indicated that
they were stylistic in nature. For instance, in the second paragraph was sentence between the words administrative and investigations, the spacing, stuff like that. And, further down, A1, 3, BWC files are property of the Oakland Police Department. You had previously used the acronym OPD, so I didn't know if you wanted to be consistent there, things like that.
okay.
Commas in certain places, semicolons when you're listing a bunch of things. So you'll see, Officer Cervantes, those are, I made the corrections in green, so you'll see those. They aren't substantive in nature. They are more stylistic.
Okay. Commissioner Shea, you had indicated as well that you had some proposed changes on some things.
I did. You want me to talk about mine or just go through the page by page?
Why don't we talk about yours? I think Commissioner Peterson Vice Chair Peterson has said that hers are more stylistic and not substantive.
Sure. Could we go to section B1? Thank you. So the B1's where requirements, and we've talked a little bit about this. And I know that part of the main reason why those who are working non-field assignments are not required to wear the BWC if they are not in uniform. I understand those reasons, both perception, willingness to talk for witnesses so that they are more willing to talk to OPD, as well as sometimes safety concerns. I thought that there might be room for a number 3 here for where requirements. And my main thought was, for those members who are not working, who are working non-field assignments, we have in other sections of this policy sort of describe this distinction between wearing and carrying, right? Wearing, it's out, it's obvious. It's one of those things that probably identifies you as a police officer. But there are times when we want members to, in the work that they are doing, some of their investigative work or in their investigations or in training, when they go into the field, to have the body worn camera just carried with them, perhaps or I think that they would, so that they can use them as recording devices as needed. So I wonder if there's a space for a paragraph number 3, specifically that members working non-field assignments shall bring or carry their BWC if they go into the field, unless it would endanger their safety to do so.
Hold on a second. Officer Cervantes, can you add that tentative number 3 now, please? And Commissioner Shea, how would it read again? Members
Members working non-field assignments shall bring or carry their BWC if they go into the field, unless it would endanger their safety to do so.
who shall bring or carry their BWC
If they go into the field,
if they go into the field,
unless it would endanger their safety to do so, or whatever. I'll start with what I had written down. Endanger their safety to do so, or any other exceptions that department might think about. And part of this is, I think that there are good reasons to not have
hold on a second, let's get
make
the
sure that
language.
I also want to make sure that those body worn camera are available to those who may want to use it or are in the field, non-uniform, but all of a sudden use it.
Okay,
Encouraging them to bring it.
all right. So the language is endanger their safety to do so. Officer Cervantes,
To
endanger
bring
their,
yeah.
in danger, you had the word in danger. And then their safety to do so.
To bring or carry the BWC.
Hmm?
I'm just trying to clean up the language.
Or any other exception. What was your language now? Jesse?
I was just leaving it open if there were other reasons why there would be a reason to not bring or carry the BWC.
So should we just leave it as unless it would endanger their safety to do so? Or do we need to spell out any other exceptions? Lieutenant Turner?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, because I know we have section B3, which I think is just below here, that talks about carrier requirements. And
B2, 3?
Yeah, so if we see that there on the screen, that members working non-field assignments shall have their BWC easily accessible to them anytime they go to the field for law enforcement assignments. So that I did this kind of this very similar to what we're talking about here. The same, it's basically the carrier requirement.
I just wasn't so sure that I see law enforcement activities, and I wasn't sure that it necessarily covered investigation.
Still as delicious
Okay.
is the fried chicken.
Yeah, it's really popular.
And
Hold on, there's got to be a number.
March, okay, there
I
she
got her.
goes.
I got her. I got it. I got it.
I want some fried chicken
Yeah, I as
now.
well would
Okay.
like fried chicken.
If you want to tell me that the law enforcement assignments does include investigations, then I'm fine with it.
Yes, yeah, so it is to envision investigation. I think we said law enforcement assignments to try and weed out the things like when they leave the PAB for lunch, and then come back. That was to avoid that. So that's kind of why. But yeah, I think, yeah, law enforcement assignments would include their investigations or anything like that.
Okay,
Then I withdraw my request.
okay. So we delete that and we just have those two under
And then
the where requirements. Okay,
I saw in B2, paragraph 2, I wasn't sure exactly what this intent was. It says the BWC may be temporarily moved from the primary location to facilitate recording or encounter. Is it supposed to be or encounter or recording and encounter?
That is.
what does that mean
remnant.
anyway?
That's a remnant fragment probably left from editing. It is to facilitate, and I know, I wish Pastor Jackie was here because she worked on that a little bit, that line, but it is to facilitate recording the encounter. That's, so we've got a typo in there somewhere, but
Okay, the encounter.
changes. Yeah.
And
Okay.
Encounter. Yeah.
And I remember this was, maybe putting it on the armored vehicle or on a robot or something to, so that they can see what's going on and record what's going on. So that makes a lot more sense to me. Thank you.
Okay.
Can we go to B4, paragraph 2? It would be the top of page 3.
C4,
B4.
B4, okay. Undercover plainclothes and task force officer.
So paragraph 2 describes officers deputized as federal task officers shall follow the applicable federal law enforcement agency guidelines for BWC. I was wondering what the situation would be if whatever agency that they are assigned to does not have guidelines for BWC, and wondering if that meant they defaulted to the OPD guidelines, or if we should include a section that says default to the OPD guidelines.
Well, likely, realistically, they're at this point, my understanding is they are defaulting to the federal guidelines, because they are sort of deputized as federal agents. Many of these task forces are with agencies that either do not have body worn cameras or do not have the same regulations. And then when the officers are with those task forces, they are operating under their rules. Now, the task forces, at least the ones we participate in, so I'm aware of 3, maybe 4. I'm aware of ATF, DEA, the U.S. Marshals, and the U.S. Secret Service counterfeiting. The counterfeiting one is not an issue because that's all financial crimes. They don't go into the fields at all, I don't think. The ATF and DEA ones are probably the ones where I'm a little bit unsure in terms of their uniform or the way they go out. And then U.S. Marshals, I believe, is all plainclothes. And then we do have a county task force, which is the Alameda County Narcotics Task Force. I am don't know if we have an officer who's currently assigned to that. They have their own separate uniform and may have their own separate rules. So yeah, this is kind of a question. I don't have the answer for what they do. So don't have too much visibility into it, but I do know federal law enforcement tends to be somewhat behind city and county when it comes to body worn camera use.
OPD part of FBI Safe Streets?
We do partner with FBI Safe Streets in terms of them offering investigative assistance, and they have some FBI agents who have their own office here. don't think we have an officer like deputized though, with them. That part I don't think we do.
So in thinking about those situations, ATF, US Marshals, that would mean that if they were to conduct some sort of enforcement activity, arresting some US Marshals generally just arrest people who have warrants that are outstanding for them, right?
Yes.
That means if they're engaging in some sort of enforcement activity that would otherwise be covered by this policy, them not having a policy means no BWC for enforcement in Oakland on those particular circumstances.
It is likely that that is exactly what is occurring, that we are not getting body worn camera footage from those incidents. Now there's pros and cons. The pro is we have an Oakland police officer who is with them. That person is able to get some more federal assistance for apprehending some people. The cons are that they are, operating in our name, and there is not body worn camera footage necessarily. I'm not sure. I know the officer that I know who's in our Marshals Task Force, every time I see that person, they are wearing their body worn camera in their uniform, but then when they are not, when I see them in their task force capacity, they're always in plainclothes. So I don't know what it is that they do in the plainclothes operation.
Under this policy, if they were in plainclothes, they would not be required to wear or carry a BWC, right?
That's true. However, I don't know if they have the federal put on, if they have some sort of over armor or something like that they put on when they arrest people in other jurisdictions or even in Oakland. I want to be transparent about that. It's very possible that is happening, that they have some sort of uniform or uniform equipment, identifies themselves as police, but then there are not body worn cameras. That's possible.
So I would just put it to the to the ad hoc here. Understandably, like, we can't necessarily control what happens in other jurisdictions or other cities or counties, but if there is or are OPD officers who people recognize and see as part of this task force conducting some sort of enforcement action without body worn camera, and they will probably have questions like, why aren't you wearing a body worn camera? We have a BWC policy. This is kind of a policy point to think about, I suppose. I just wanted to bring it up to sort of make sure we cover this particular situation, because sometimes that's where the gaps are, where when we have, interagency cooperation, which frankly is good, is helpful, information sharing is good, and sharing resources is good. And it helps the police do the work that they want to do and the enforcement that they want to do. Just there are sometimes slips in accountability when that happens, which that's kind of what happens sometimes.
Okay, so let me see what our policy is basically saying is, yeah, you got to wear your body worn cameras for any enforcement purposes, unless there's a federal policy to the contrary. That's essentially what we're saying. And so for us, we need to decide whether or not we want the body worn cameras on, activated, irrespective of what federal policy or any other policy is.
Well,
And I go ahead.
I actually disagree with that. I think that if there are federal guidelines, there are probably reasons for them. I mean, I didn't want to go that far, I will say.
Okay.
But perhaps this ad hoc may want to think about that. I was just saying in situations where it's just there are no policies on body worn camera, no federal agency guidelines, which it sounds like there are some agencies where that might be the case.
Maybe.
But okay, go ahead. Let me ask you this. If there is a federal guideline that basically says you do not activate this body worn camera for this enforcement activity, but our policy says you shall activate your BWC for this enforcement activity. Jesse, you're saying that we defer to that federal guideline. I'm suggesting that maybe we don't. And we have some obligations and some requirements for our officers to activate body-worn cameras. So we are basically saying that you get a pass if a federal agency says you don't have to activate. What does that do as well in terms of investigations, use of force, et cetera, et cetera? We are giving our officers an out by saying that even though under other circumstances, the body-worn camera should have been activated and we would have captured this disputed use of force situation, we can't do anything about it. We can't even discipline, we can't do anything because the federal guidelines control. I got a couple of hands, Chief Lyles, and then Frida. Frida, go ahead. I think your hand was up first.
Thank you.
And then we'll go to Chief Lyles. Okay.
I'll just quickly say that I agree with you. At CPRA, we haven't, in my brief time at CPRA, we have encountered at least a handful of complaints from people describing a situation with undercover officers, and we're kind of at a loss. We're at a loss for how to investigate those because there's no body cam footage, and there's been several complaints of officers participating with other agencies. So I think that this is a concern in the community. We've received mail as well disputing the practice of undercover officers. So I just want to relay that to you, that we have been hearing it from complainants. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief Lyles.
You know, just recently, President Biden from the Omnibus Bill 2022 ordered that the federal agents must wear body-worn cameras. I don't think the purchases have been made yet or the implementation of the policy has been developed, but we know that, for example, the FBI and issues of arrest, et cetera, they are going to have to wear body-worn cameras. My recommendation would be that we adhere to our policy, that we adhere to what we want here in Oakland. And if it comes up where somebody is making a complaint, some FBI agent saying, no, we don't do that, we make an arrest, turn that camera off, we don't do it. We adhere to our policy until there's some kind of federal rule saying they have authority. We have a jurisdiction over the city of Oakland, so we should keep it on. Now, if they ask us to work in some adjunct function, perimeter control or something like that, we should keep our cameras on. That's our policy. They don't get to come in and dictate to the city of Oakland what you can and cannot do.
Vice Chair,
unless it's written, unless there's a federal law saying they have jurisdiction over it and supersede whatever the city municipal policy or law happens to be. If it's not written, then we go by our guidelines. That's what I would recommend.
Vice Chair Peterson, then we'll hear from you. And then Deputy Director Settle. Okay, Vice Chair Peterson.
Yes, I would agree with Reggie, because again, we shouldn't make assumptions about what a federal law that we aren't even familiar with might say about whether we can or cannot have body-worn cameras when we're in joint operations with them. So I concur with Chief Lyles that we write our policy, and they can come and make whatever objections, should they make objections at that time.
They might
Okay,
policy and incorporate it in theirs.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We shouldn't assume that
Yeah.
a policy they don't have, or that it would supersede our policy. Let's write ours.
okay, Deputy Director Settle, and then we'll go to Lieutenant Turner.
Hi, because I am not an expert in this area. Do you guys think we should seek guidance from the city attorney on what language we should have in this particular area? Because
No.
I don't know if a federal policy would supersede ours or not. And so I would hate to put something in the policy that's not accurate.
Yeah, but their
However-
policy doesn't even exist now. There's no federal policy on body worn cameras. You know, the omnibus bill just passed, several months ago. FBI is a huge agency. DOJ is a huge agency. So I'm sure they haven't even made the equipment purchases yet.
Lieutenant Turner and Vice Chair Peterson, your hand is still up. Did you have another point? But go ahead, Lieutenant Turner.
Thank you. Yeah, so just a few, just for context. Yeah, we're unclear whether, what the state of these different task forces are in terms of their use of body-worn cameras. This isn't, again, the agency itself. So while the FBI may be waiting for body-worn cameras, it's possible that these task forces have their, have body-worn cameras. These task forces typically do have officers from local jurisdictions. As we know, local jurisdictions often use body-worn cameras. So it's very possible this is kind of a moot point that they already have it, something. And then also just as a context, this is only for the officers who are deputized as the task force officer. This is not for any of the officers who are working in like a joint operation. Say if the FBI were to say, we are serving a warrant, could you help us on the perimeter post or whatever, those officers would definitely be required to still follow our policy. There, and some things I do understand the desire to sort of make our policy control. There is the possibility that we have not manual rules, we have MOUs, memoranda of understanding between the city and these federal agencies that we are required to abide by when we second an officer to a task force. That could include that the officer is required because they are deputized as a federal agent, that they are required to follow those rules as opposed to the rules of their home agency. That again would not surprise me. And if we do sign an MOU, then we're kind of bound by that. But an overall thing to just consider is that there's a possibility, especially when we have a task force officer and that task force is run by a federal agency. They have their own rules, and we say, no, we want our officer to follow our rules. That they'll say, well, then in that case, thank you, we don't want your officer on our task force. Sure. That's a possibility. And I'm not saying it as a negative or positive, I'm just saying it's a possibility that could exist, that we might lose that resource. The U.S. Secret Service Task Force, for instance, or not Secret Service, but the U.S. Marshal Task Force is extremely helpful in apprehending people who have warrants for their arrest for violent crimes. In the city of Oakland, they have apprehended many of our people who are suspected of engaging in community violence, and it would be a blow if we were to lose, say, that task force. I'm not saying that is going to happen, or even that's but it is a possibility that we do have to consider. So just to put that out there, and if that were a follow-on or a knock-on effect of us requiring that our task force officers follow this policy, that we were sort of ejected from federal task force, I know that it would likely be a sticking point for the chief of police, because those are valuable force multiplying option. So just something to consider.
Okay, thank you. Frida.
Yeah, just to note that from the community oversight perspective, we only have access to Oakland Police Department's body cams. So if they join a task force and use federal body cams, we wouldn't be able to access that. So I don't know how any complaints, and I don't know how any investigations into complaints about undercover operations have gone in the past. But in recent history, I think they've been closed as out of our jurisdiction, even though they technically are, because there's an Oakland officer involved in the process. So yeah, thank you.
So let me see where we are. Thank you, Frida. So right now, this too says B42, officers deputized as federal task force officers shall follow the agency guidelines for body-worn camera use while they are conducting those federal task force operations and investigations. So in theory, then they are removed from being OPD officers. They are now federal task force officers, and they are required to follow the federal task force guidelines. It may be that we can't do much about that language, and that it needs to remain, because they are then again no longer acting as OPD officers. They're federal officers, and they're under federal jurisdiction and authority. So maybe we can't do much about it. Chief Lyles?
Yeah, I would just, I would think that we cross this bridge when we come to it. We're projecting into the future that they may have a policy, they may not want to function in the community any longer if we're worrying about, all of this is all speculation. And we don't know what their policy is going to be. We do have we do know that this new innovative process with federal officers, marshals, and FBI and DOJ, et cetera, on issues of arrests, will have to have body-worn cameras. We know that's the order that's come down, and that's a very new order. I don't know if their policies are even been written yet. So we should, Eddie, just govern ourselves where we're protecting our community the best we know how. And then if it comes where we have an issue where someone, put their foot in the ground and saying, look, if you're going to turn that on, then we're not going to function in your city, then at that time we make a decision. We modify the policy if we have to. I agree with Lieutenant Turner. I wouldn't want to lose the marshal's effectiveness in this town. But again, there's a reason why they want the federal agents to wear body-worn cameras during arrests. It's not just for ornaments. They want them, and it's a big expenditure. They want them to have wearing those cameras because they want to have the kind of safety and for their citizens, for the United States citizens, as we want for Oaklanders. So, let's just leave the policy like it is, saying that we're going to keep your camera if you're deputized there. And if it comes to a point later on where there's a problem with it, the policy has to be modified.
Mm-hmm. I think that is a good way to end this discussion, unless somebody else has anything else to add. So we won't make any changes or any additions relating to B42, right? Okay. All right. Commissioner Shea, you're up. Anything else that you want to tweak?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. Could we go to page?
What section?
Sorry. That's stylistic. I think Marcia caught it. I am looking at page 7C2.
C2, okay.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I should have brought this up earlier, but I didn't get a good chance to really sit down and think about all these things until this past week. I was thinking about, when I was reading this section, what's covered in a level 1 investigation versus what's covered in a level 2 investigation. Level 1 is use of force resulting in death, intentional firearm discharge, substantial risk of death, serious bodily injury, unintentional firearms discharge, intentional weapon strike to the head, and anything that a watch commander says elevates it to a level 1 investigation. That's what I got. I got that from K4, K3 or K4. I can't remember. Here's what's in level 2. And any strike to the head, carotid restraint not resulting in loss of consciousness, use of impact weapons, unintentional firearms discharge not resulting in injury, police canine bite, use of force resulting in injuries to subject requiring medical treatment, and level 3 use of force used or applied on a restrained subject. Level 3 is OC spray, taser, impact weapon, but used but didn't hit somebody, baton for a non-striking purpose, weaponless defense, on-duty firearm discharge against an animal. And so my main question here is, just wanted to sort of have a thought for the ad hoc, which is level 1 cover what we want, or should we expand it to level 2? That's what I wanted to be intentional in thinking about, based on what is described in level 1 versus level 2. Because of course, level 1 we take, I imagine the department takes very seriously, and that's why there's a prohibition here. I wonder if we should have that same intentionality about how that a level 2, that same intentionality about reviewing body-worn camera in level 2 investigations, which again, may not be the ones that necessarily have a higher chance of death or serious bodily injury, but are things that could very much so, right? And that's just all I wanted the IDOC to consider.
So one way to expand it would be members designated as involved in a level 1 or level 2 investigations.
Yeah,
And then so we'd add level 2, and that they're prohibited from reviewing until the level 1 or level 2 investigator allows the review. That would be sort of how it should read. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about the exact procedure. I know that in D4, there's a section about level 2 through 4 use of force investigations, and it's conducted by supervisors rather than a level 1 investigator. So it may go a lot faster or have a different process. So that may, if we make this change, it requires some additional tweaking to make sure it all pans out. I see Lieutenant Turner's hand up.
Yeah, Lieutenant Turner.
Yeah, so this is one of the things, and I think our IAD or CPRA can kind of tell is one of the reasons why we have this distinction is because when we have these level 1 investigations, the entire sort of process happens all at the same time in terms of the investigation and taking a statement from the officer. So we have to kind of move through a lot of different things. As a United States citizen, of course, people have the right to not incriminate themselves. But then as police officers, there's POBRA, right, which I'm sure the executive director from CPRA has provided some training on regarding the number of times that officers can be interviewed and things like that. So when we do these level 1 investigations, the investigator will speak to the officer, take their statement, ask them several questions, really interview them, interrogate as necessary. Then typically, once that initial statement has been taken, the investigator may decide as part of their investigation to show the member their video and then compare it with the recollections that they've been given. The level 2 investigation does not have that same level of staff commitment. There for a level 1 investigation, these are the officer involved shootings, things like that, that Commissioner Shea described. We have these call out teams that come in. They are called out to, a large group of people to investigate. For a level 2, it's that person's supervisors that's doing the investigation. So there's some logistical challenges around that. There's also the issue of, when the officers write their police report, and they're relying on evidence, including perhaps their body worn camera. That is one of the ways that we've sort of bifurcated, is these level 1s that have the call outs and the entire investigative apparatus versus the level 2s. So I think one thing I'd just like to mention is that even though we do allow officers to review their body worn camera files when, say, writing a report about these, that doesn't mean that we necessarily lose rigor. Of course, there is a difference in the intensity of the investigation, but level 2s still require the force review board at the end of a level 2 investigation. So if an officer strikes a person in the face, uses an impact weapon, some of those things that you heard Commissioner Shea mention, there still is a force review board at the end of that. That is going to include, now with the charter language, can include the OIG, can include the chair of the police commission, CPRA representation. And so there is still rigor, but it is kind of designed to be able to operate within the staff capacity. So it was a decision that was made. I understand kind of thinking about it from a different perspective, but in terms of the way that investigations are done, I think there is still sufficient rigor in our level 2s, while still understanding that people can review this piece of evidence.
Go ahead, Commissioner Shea.
So it strikes me that sort of the department's distinction or policy choice of not having members review for level 1s are partly because of this additional layer where there is this interrogation and at some point confrontation or review of body worn camera. And part of that to me feels like getting exactly what the member was thinking or remembers, or the decision making that they were making at the time that whatever caused the level 1 investigation happened. And to go from what they were actually thinking or not thinking, as opposed to what a body worn camera may clue them into about what they should have been thinking about or not. Right. Right. Exactly. And so, it's a decision point. It's a policy choice. I absolutely get it. But it feels like part of the reasons why level 1s are built this way is to make sure that they're essentially giving a statement from memory rather than from what video that they review or changing their statement, what it may be. And I don't really see, outside of the procedural aspect of it, a reason to change that for level 2s, which still seem rather serious, the types of force. And that's my thought about it. And I have already been a proponent just straight up of not being able to review body worn cameras, period, prior to writing a report. But this feels slightly different with the level of force that we're talking about. And again, it's a policy point, it's a policy decision. And I think that, those are my thoughts about it.
So let me ask this, so you can live with this language as it is? You're not pushing that we change, that we include level 2? It would be ideal if the policy did do that, but you can live with it being limited to level 1 investigations?
I would
How about
prefer,
that for a hard question?
I would prefer to have level 2 investigations, but I believe that these ad hoc should operate as a consensus, and whatever the consensus is of the ad hoc. Although we did lose a few members between the start
Yes.
and right now.
Yes. I mean, I guess for me, for the reasons that Lieutenant Turner explained, I can live with the level 1, with limiting it to level 1 investigations, but I don't know. Maybe we've lost the vice chair. We've lost Chief Lyles as well. So,
I would say that for purposes of tonight's discussion, I doubt that we have critical mass to change the policy.
okay.
And I think we had already decided or thought that this would be the last meeting. And I'm sorry to bring up such heavy topics when we were thinking we were done.
No, that's okay. The one thing too is that we can, I mean, we'll still have a chance. This is just the ad hoc version. As we take it to the commission, there may be members of the commission who will feel the same way as you, or feel strongly that the policy ought to include level 2 investigations. And so, but we can, for purposes of tonight, I think we're safe to go as it is. And then we will continue to work on it. Again, there may be people who feel strongly, as strong as you do, Jesse, about having it include level 2. And,
I agree
go
with
ahead.
moving forward in that manner.
Okay. What other section? What's your next session?
That's all I got. That's all I got.
Okay, you saved the best for last. Okay.
I guess I did.
Okay, I know that Chief Lyles had said he reviewed the policy. He didn't have any issues or concerns with it. He said that at the beginning when he first came on and everything. So, and we will include Vice Chair Peterson's comments and everything, her stylistic changes. Can I add, let's see, and Officer Cervantes, I see you've highlighted something. Is that a provision you think we need to discuss?
Yes, ma'am. So our city attorney, Bridget Martin, went over our policy as well. And I just wanted to go over what she had recommended for our changes, if you don't mind. There were just a few to clear up some things.
Okay.
So to make this more clear, she worded it, members shall not intentionally use their body worn camera to record in a public or private locker rooms.
So hold on. This is A2-6. Okay, go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am. So before it was members shall not intentionally use the body worn camera to record at department facilities where reasonable expectation of privacy exists, and then examples, unless there is a legal right to record and a departmental requirement to record.
Okay.
The language that was changed is going to be to record in the public or private locker rooms, changing rooms, restrooms, or medical or hospital facilities, unless there is a legal right to record and a departmental requirement to record. So that was.
So this changes, before it used to provide what?
Before it was examples. So before it was just a reasonable expectation of privacy exists.
Okay.
And it gave it some examples, and she made it just more clear and concise, whether it's private or public locker room.
Okay.
Private,
okay.
Public or private locker rooms. And then of course, unless we have a legal right to do so and a departmental requirement to record. And we kind of discussed those type of examples in our previous meetings.
Anyone have any concerns about that change? Commissioner Shea? How are
This
you
went a little
feeling?
this went a little further than what the previous version had, because the previous version said only department facilities.
Yes.
And so that does cover, and that's covered in public or private locker rooms, changing rooms, and restrooms, and I think that was the intent. But it also includes medical or hospital facilities, and so that feels like one that feels like should be another bullet point to highlight that that is a medical or hospital facility. And two, I think the question is whether that is, and that goes to sort of questions that we had a little bit earlier in this ad hoc about what guidelines officers should use when they are in medical or hospital facilities. Looks like Lieutenant Turner has his hand up.
Yeah, so when our attorney suggested this, I kind of pushed back with the same worries, right? And noted that in the ad hoc we had talked about, and there were a lot of concerns around this idea around medical and hospital facilities. And, you know, what if the officers are engaged in some sort of police activity and they don't have their cameras on, and then there's force or there's disrespect or whatever, and it's not captured. So the discussion I had with her, and she and I think I kind of came back to it, is when that last clause that Officer Cervantes is highlighting there, where it says unless there's a legal right to record and a departmental requirement. And so then basically she's saying that the policy would control. So all the required activations would still control. So if they are using force, if they are engaged in an arrest or detention, all those things would control. But otherwise, if they are otherwise in these sensitive areas, locker rooms, changing rooms, restrooms, or medical or hospital facilities, that they keep the cameras off. I know this is a difficult one because it basically really limits the recording to when the officers are having like interaction with someone whose liberties they are limiting, someone who's under arrest or detained, and not really when they are doing investigations or things like that. So talking to witnesses or something, some of these things. That is that's a difficult one. I think her perspective is informed because she is our representative to Alameda County Hospital System, who is extremely anti the officers having body-worn cameras activated at all in their hospital facilities because of patient privacy. We, the department, push back and say we want these cameras on for accountability and for evidence. And I think she has tried to get us to a happy medium at this point. I think Commissioner Shea, you're definitely make a valid point about the medical hospital maybe breaking that out into a separate section or something like that, if you think that that's useful. But overall, once I kind of wrapped my head around the idea that the requirements for when we have police officers engaged in these liberty limiting activities, that their cameras are going to be on, but otherwise they're going to be off in these facilities. I understood it and kind of it made sense from a privacy perspective, even though I'm a little concerned from an accountability and criminal evidence perspective, if that makes sense.
So let me ask you this, is there a legal right to record in a medical or hospital facility? Because there are two requirements that have to be met, unless there is one, a legal right to record, and two, a departmental requirement to record. So both of them have to be met.
Yeah, so I think the department would say that we have the legal right to record when we are in a place where we are legally allowed to be. So if the hospital staff ejects us from if they eject us from the hospital, then of course we couldn't stay there.
So the legal right to record is from a Fourth Amendment perspective.
Yes.
Okay. And then here's where the policy may meet the road. Right. Let me think about some situations. Interviewing witnesses or family members for a homicide who you meet in the hospital lobby.
Mhm.
On legal right to record, allowed to be in the lobby. No departmental requirement to record, but authorized to record statements. What does an officer do?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I would probably say what I would train the officer is say, let's step out of the hospital to take that statement. Just because it's really, maybe the officer, the family member, the whole family, they're all like, great, let's record this. But the hospital staff is really not happy with us right now about these cameras on. So, yeah.
Okay. Let me think about. Officer is transporting or following or going with a suspect who was arrested but sought medical attention. Go with them to the hospital. Now potentially shifting into a hospital guard, but person starts talking, or maybe they start trying to take a statement. What does the policy say?
And it
Or
says,
what?
keep it on. Right, I think that the officer at that point can keep it on because we have a specific requirement for detentions and arrests. Taking a statement from a detainee is much different than taking a statement from a witness. That way, even if the hospital staff were upset, it would be, we'd say this is an accountability perspective. We have to keep this on.
And then assault with force likely by a patient on a member or employee of the hospital. Walking in the doors, what does an officer do?
If we believe the suspect is still on scene, that's turn the camera on. If we think we're gonna make an arrest or detention, yeah, turn the camera on.
And then let's see, going to deactivation. Actively searching involvement is included, arrested. Those are the three highest likelihood scenarios that I can think of.
Yeah.
So right now, let's see, should we do a 6 and a new number 7, or do we leave 6 as covering the medical or hospital facilities? Commissioner Shea, what is the downside to listing them all there together?
Not much. I mean, I also think that it number 6 may describe situations outside of police buildings too, which is not a bad thing.
Yes, that is another change that she specifically made, was take away that department facility, precisely because of these sensitive areas like restrooms, locker rooms, changing rooms.
Okay. So 6 passes, we'll leave 6 in as is. And Officer Cervantes, I guess we should have started right at 6 o'clock because it's 7:15, almost 7:15 now. Okay, Officer Cervantes, what next?
There's only 2 more and these ones are pretty quick. So
Okay,
hopefully. All right, so the next section, D2. And it was just, she wanted added for this last part, only this part was added. Each selected recording has a minimum length of 10 minutes or longest video if there is no 10-minute video.
okay.
And that was it. Was there anything? I just have one more after that.
Okay, so
I'll wait
minimum
for
of 10 minutes or the longest video if if it's less than 10 minutes is what you're saying? I'm not sure.
Yes,
It really is if it's less than 10 minutes. Is that
yes.
the point? So minimum length of 10 minutes or the longest video if there is no 10-minute video, because we are talking about video from various cameras.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
what we're looking at? We'd be looking at videos from various cameras. One may be 8 minutes, one may be 5, one may be 10, and one may be 12 or something.
This one's for a specific officer, and if that officer does not have a 10-minute video or longer, then the supervisor will review the longest video if that officer does not have the 10-minute video minimum. So she wanted that it added in there because that she doesn't want to skip that officer. That officer still should be reviewed, even though there's not a 10-minute video. That's what that part is for.
Okay.
What situation would an officer not have a video of at least 10 minutes?
They work one day and then get injured for the rest of the month or something like that. Like, that's likely not gonna happen.
Okay. I was thinking it was like someone who just keeps showing up late to the call. Real
Yeah.
late to the call.
If there's a person who doesn't have a 10-minute video for the month, yeah, that person hopefully was injured or was on vacation, because there's no way you can be operating every call within at less than 10 minutes.
Okay. All right, very good. Okay, so that one's good then.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, last one is section F2, and I believe it was just for the retention, and it was just adding no recording shall be deleted while any request for the recordings is pending, including but not limited to a public records request or litigation holds request. And that was before it was just the public record request. She just cleaned up that language.
Okay.
And that was my last one.
So, sorry. What was the section that would, that talked about litigation holds? Or was there another section in this policy that talked about litigation holds? Or is this the section?
This is it right here. Civil litigation is just number 4, and then subsections training, and then this is, sorry about that, public
No,
record request.
I know the feeling. So I suppose my question is, where does the litigation hold come from, and how does the department know about it, and why is it? Yeah, where does it come from?
So those come from our city attorney, likely because they've been served something or somehow a claim has been made or something like that. Then, you know, with the process for a hold for those records, the city attorney will become notified that there is a hold, and then they will inform the department that there is a hold and that we need to hold on to those records.
That
Okay.
sounds fine to me. Just wanted to.
Yeah, this is basically
where that was coming from.
that helps that office. So yeah.
So we good with that change? Officer Shea, you good with that? Everybody else?
Whoa, whoa, what did you just call me?
I'm gonna call you out on it. Anyone else on the call? Were we good with this final change here? Anything for good of the order? Any last minute thoughts or anything on the policy? Because I think that the committee approves it subject to the stylistic changes. So once we that Commissioner Vice Chair Peterson is done, so maybe we go ahead, finalize, circulate it to the ad hoc Officer Cervantes and say this is the final that's been agreed upon, and then we'll take it from there. We still have to decide, you know, as the commission, what we'll do, how we'll roll it out, whether or not we're going to have any public forums or anything like that, or a public forum, but that's going to be a decision that'll be made by the commission. There was a suggestion that we try to co-sponsor something. a public forum and have a lot of people on, but I think the three commissioners on the ad hoc will explore more what best we should do. Commissioner Shea.
I just wanted to note that I took a look at the retention policy and all of it made sense.
Okay.
And that had exceptions or lifetime requirements for the things that look like they needed lifetime exceptions for. I was wondering what that, if that particular, you said you were going to not you, Commissioner, but the department said that they would make it look nice or pretty
I will
to
be
attach
doing
to the
the
file.
appendix.
Okay.
Thank you for looking over that, Commissioner Shea. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, I think that this really is our last meeting then, as the Body Worn Camera ad hoc. So we can cancel the other recurring meetings in the future. And again, I want to thank everybody who's hung in there and who've contributed to this whole process. So want to send that out, Officer Cervantes, the final. We'll take the next steps and advise everybody what the commission wants to do. And we don't know when this policy will make it to the commission agenda, but we'll figure that out. I guess October is going to be pretty busy anyway, Commissioner Shea. The agendas are going to be pretty busy anyway.
At least for the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, again, thank you all for everything, and Frida and Jody as well. Thank you for hanging in there all the time with us, and Deputy Director Settle and Officer Cervantes and Lieutenant Turner. Thank you all so very much. It's always a pleasure working with you all. Okay, well, until the next policy. All right, bye-bye. I think we're done.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, good night.
you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And have a great night. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks now. I'm gonna leave it.